Hey everybody, welcome back to the NerdNest podcast. It's me, it's Russ. I don't know if I'm pointing at him because I'll change things after the fact, but Russ, what's going on, man? You have been traveling the world, my friend.
Yeah, I do. We just got back from London, I don't know, 2-3 days ago. I am still so jet lagged. Like, I thought I had got it in check, but no, like last night I went to bed at 9 and I was like, okay, I'll sleep through because I was like so tired, and I woke up at midnight and I was like, well, I just woke up and I was like, oh, well, that was a full night's sleep. I'm feeling good now. It's probably about 5 in the morning and it was midnight and I was like, oh crap. And so yeah, I'm still off, but it's messed up my video production stuff. I planned on actually getting a video done yesterday and I just couldn't finish it. And so I'm hopefully going to finish it today. We'll see.
Yeah, it's funny, in our private Discord, you messaged us and you're like, hey, I'm back from London, had a great trip, and I think that I'll be okay for the show. And Carrie was like, I don't know how he does it. And I said, dude just does not sleep. So yeah. You're a machine, and everybody is duly impressed. So before we get to the news and stuff, and on today's episode, I want to talk about a big release coming to Steam and a publisher really focusing on the Steam Deck, which is awesome. I also want to talk about the games that we've been playing, and I want to talk about this little guy right here, the RG Cube. Plus, Shovel Knight news and all kinds of stuff. But before we get there, you just went to London. I know that you're going to have a video out that talks about this, so don't give away the ghost on this. But what handhelds did you bring with you?
So I only brought the two that I had reviewed the day before I left. So I was the Odin 2 Mini and then that RG Cube. And that was it. I didn't bring anything else. My son brought my ROG Ally, and that wasn't because he chose it. It was because I forgot the Steam Deck here at the studio. And so when I got to the house and I was like, oh, do you have a handheld? He's like, no, because my youngest just took the Switch. And so I was like, well, all I have at the house is the ROG Ally. And I was like, you got 4 hours to download whatever games you want for it, And so he ended up playing that. But yeah, I only had the Odin 2 Mini and then the RG Cube. That was it. So.
Very cool. And so when you were out, obviously I can see like you told me, what modern games you played on these handhelds. What retro? Did you play any retro games while you were out?
Yeah, so I basically compartmentalized the two. And so the Odin 2 Mini was like it was basically my Nintendo Switch. Like, I put all my Switch games on it. I actually just took my SD card from the Odin 2 and put it in that and then set everything up. So I mostly played Nintendo Switch games, a couple Android games, stuff like that. And then the RG Arc was just retro gaming. So some Super Nintendo and then a lot of GameCube and PS2.
Did you say RG Arc or the RG Cube?
Cube. I always say Arc.
Okay. Gotcha.
I've messed that up, I don't know, 100 times. Like, I had to
they've
cut
got
it out
the
of the
same
video.
D-pad.
I know. It's because it's like a word and not a number. I'm so used to numbers. From those guys.
Yeah. So what did you say? Which actual retro games you were playing while you were out?
It was so I mostly was doing like testing, hey, how are Super Nintendo games and stuff. So I did my same thing I always do, where I'm like, okay, now I'm going to sit down and actually play Super Mario World and finish it. And then I get 5 levels in. I get to the first ghost castle, and I'm like, oh, there's 3 endings to this level, and I don't know 2 of them, and it frustrates me. And so then I stop. You know what I mean? Because I'm doing this all on a plane, because I wasn't playing much while actually on vacation.
Yeah.
But on the plane, I got no internet, so I can't look up the 3 endings to the ghost house. So it's the worst time to play that game.
Because it was like being in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's if I can't do it right, then I don't want to play this game. I've been waiting, 30 plus years to play it. I'm not going to half-ass it now. And so, so I played a bit of Mario World, and then I was like, screw it, I'm going to go back to, and then so I started playing Paper Mario Thousand Year Door on GameCube. Really loving that. And it's funny because I was playing that on the Switch previously, and I just didn't like
it. The new one?
The new one. There's a remastered version of it.
Yeah.
But it's only at 30 frames per second, and it just doesn't feel fluid and smooth like the old one did, which ran at 60. And so even though I got an hour or two into it on the Switch, I ended up just actually going back to the GameCube version, which is kind of funny. I think there's some quality of life things in the Switch version too, which makes it so it has less backtracking, but I'd rather have the smooth gameplay.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really strange decision that Nintendo made there, focusing not hitting 60 frames per second. And look, it's a turn-based RPG where you have to press buttons at certain times, and it's not like 60 frames per second for that kind of gameplay is super important, but like when you're looking at it, you're like, well, I know what it used to look like. Why can't they do it now? And it just feels like Nintendo was just like, nah, this is good enough. Maybe when the Super Switch comes out, we'll have access to 60 frames per second on that for that game, and then you'll have the best of both worlds.
Right. Yeah. You know, I'm hoping there'll be some sort of patch that you can do on emulation at some point, and that would be great to unlock 60 frames. So they do that with certain other games as well. But yeah, it was just kind of a weird decision for them only to do 30 frames per second. And partly, you know, I don't think an average consumer is going to notice, but like for me, that's one of my test games. Like when I'm testing GameCube performance, I like to test that game because it often is a good indicator of GPU problems, because that one will have all sorts of bugs and stuff in certain areas. Then I'll be like, okay, this one's having issues, or, you know, whatever it means. So it's a compatibility thing as opposed to a performance thing.
Awesome. I did not know that, and now I've got a little more knowledge in my arsenal. Thank you, Russ. All right, we're going to get back to the games that we've been playing in a little bit, but first, let's talk about the news, or at least one, like the headline topic here, and that's that Square Enix, who for a really long time was kind of in bed with Epic Games, where they would bring their games to PC long after they were on PlayStation or other consoles. They would bring them to PC, but then it would be a timed exclusivity where they're only on the Epic Games Store. Now, in recent weeks, the guy in charge of Square Enix, whose name is escaping me right now, but he has said, look, this isn't working for us. Our games aren't selling as much as we would like. We need to make sure that we aren't excluding customers, essentially. And that's exactly what they were doing by only putting it on the Epic Games Store. Now, there's a lot of people out there that would say, well, you could just install... I mean, it's the Epic Games Store. All it is a different launcher. And yes, that's true. But a lot of people just aren't interested in using it. And it doesn't cost publishers anything to make the game available on Steam, Epic Game Store, GOG, and any other number of stores. So leaving any of them out for any reason just feels like an own goal. And it feels like Square Enix is finally waking up and realizing that, and in a big way, because they brought Kingdom Hearts, those games, to Steam. Now, that's not new news. But what is new news, now that they're on Steam, is they're doing like this giveaway where you can win a Steam Deck. So it feels like Square is looking at the Steam Deck and handheld PC gaming and saying, you know what? That is a market that is worth us paying attention to. And that feels like a change from them. And I think if Square is making that change, then a lot of other publishers are going to be making that change too. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think I think it's a good point in that, yes, this is becoming now like a platform, right? They actually are saying we want to launch this for the Steam Deck specifically. How are we going to do that? We're going to put it on Steam. And so if that's making like company decisions to put things on Steam as a result of just the Steam Deck, or maybe in tandem with the Steam Deck as its own, like that's pretty awesome. You know, I like that might actually, you know, be of benefit for future decisions as well. Now, I don't know if I'm going to play these games. Like they are so complicated for being Disney games, for having Disney characters in them. Like I just went to the Kingdom Hearts like front page on Twitter, and it says Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 plus 2.5 remix, 2.8 final chapter prologue, and 3 with Roman numerals plus Remind. Those are two different words. Re and Mind DLC are available on Steam. Like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like,
I have no idea.
I just want to play like a Final Fantasy game that has Disney characters in it. I'll do that, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to get into any of that stuff. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just always funny to me that how complicated they made something that should be pretty simple.
Yeah, you know, there should be like an infographic on their website that says, buy this one first, then buy this one, and just tell us what order to play things in. It feels like Destiny. You know how when you log into Destiny and you're like, I don't freaking know where to go or what to do,
Right.
and I'm just lost. And the people who've been playing it all this time, they're like, oh, it's easy. All you got to do is look at this thing and then this thing and then go over here and do a backflip and then click on this and then you're all set. You can start your missions. Well, yeah, but you know that because you've done all those things. But I'm a new user. I don't know what the hell to do. Kingdom Hearts feels the same way. Like, yeah, I could go on, I guess, Wikipedia or something and look at the release dates for all these games, but it just seems like their naming conventions are a barrier to entry, and it scares people away. Now, I've never been somebody who's been interested in Kingdom Hearts, but I know that it is a huge franchise that people adore, and people keep talking about Kingdom Hearts 4 being on the way sometime in the near future. Like, people are very excited about this franchise because it's filled with beloved characters, and whoever thought that it would be possible for them to bring the Final Fantasy characters together with Disney characters and make this weird action-based RPG where you got a key for a weapon and it's got like this huge story to it. I think that all of that is amazing, that it's something that ever got pulled off. I'm still not interested in it, but I'm very interested in big publishers like Square recognizing that the Steam Deck and handheld PC gaming is not something that can be ignored anymore. And that's very cool. And it's not just cool for people who are into handheld PC gaming, because it's also cool, any game that's optimized to run well on these lower powered machines like the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally or Ally X or the Lenovo Legion Go or any other number of handheld PCs. It means it's also going to run well on lower spec machines. And that means more people get to enjoy these games, and I think that that's exciting.
Yeah, totally. And it's just kind of cool that the Steam Deck on its own is like getting to the point where it's a target for some of these people, and I think that's amazing. And the greatest thing about the Steam Deck, and we've all got videos talking about it, is just, for me, is the Steam cloud saves and just the ability to just kind of jump back between the two. And it's kind of cool. Like, Kingdom Hearts is a game where I've always been interested in trying them out. I've tried out like Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 on the PS2. I bought Kingdom Hearts 3 on the Xbox One or whatever when it came out. I've always bought these games. I've always tried them for, a little bit or whatever. But having the ability to go from like, a desktop experience, then jump over to my handheld and continue my game would probably make it so I'd be a lot more apt to actually play it. And a lot of that just has to come from the Steam ecosystem, and like all the work that's been done over these years to make that all seamless for us is pretty awesome.
Very cool. Very cool. You bring up cloud saves, and it reminds me of a game that I've been playing that currently does not support cloud saves, which is a little frustrating. They also don't support controllers, and because of this, I've kind of stopped my playthrough. I tweeted at them and I said, "Hey, are we gonna get controller support?" And they said, "Yes, that's something that we're working on." The game is called Scald Against the Black Priory, and it is an old school, I'm going to say in the style of Commodore 64 RPG, like party-based RPG, where you've got like your characters along the right-hand side of the screen. You've got your battlefield, and you're fighting against like these pixely guys, and it, like, as you're playing, it has like in the very beginning, you get attacked by a diseased rat or something, and it's got like there's darkness in front of you, and they show you a picture, and you could just barely make out the rat. And then as you read the description underneath, and that's like what you actually do, sit down and read through the description of this diseased rat that's slowly moving towards you. You hit the continue button, and then it shifts to the next picture, and you see a little bit more detail as the rat has gotten closer to you, and there's a little bit better of a description. It feels very much like those kind of games that existed back in the day.
Yeah.
And I've been following these guys on Twitter, and I love it because every time somebody beats the game, they get like this little banner, and then they tweet it at the developers. That's like, "Hey, congratulations! Your exploits are going to go down into the history of everything," or whatever. And the developer always retweets it. So I keep seeing that people are beating this game, and I want to, but the fact that there's no cloud saves means that I'm not always able to pick up where I left off. For a while, it wouldn't work on my Mac, and now it works on the Mac. So they had updated that, which is great. That means that there's still development happening. But I'm going to wait until there's cloud saves and controller support, because I don't like playing with a mouse and keyboard. That's just not my jam. But this game's awesome. And if you're somebody who wants to sit down with a mouse and keyboard and play an old school, pixely C64 looking RPG, I think that Scald Against the Black Priory is something that you're going to want to check out. One thing that is different than other games in this genre is you can have momentum based on how many squares you move towards your enemy before you attack them. So you can build up momentum by charging, and it adds a lot to the battlefield, I feel like. Definitely a cool game that I think that people are going to want to check out. So that's one of the games that I've been playing this week. You haven't checked this one out, have you, Russ?
I remember you talking about it in a previous episode. It looks great. It's definitely not my style of game, but I definitely appreciate how old and retro it looks. It's awesome.
Yeah, very old and retro. In fact, if you hit the tab button, it brings up an old C64, not terminal, but where I remember having a C64 back in the day, and you had that blue and white screen where you would either type basic commands or load games. You would be load whatever, and it brings that up, and you can it has cheats, Russ, built-in cheats. You hit tab and you can type in the things that you want, the cheaty stuff that you want to do, fully heal your party, or start combat over, that kind of thing, which is awesome, because it's a pretty unforgiving game. If you make a bad move, you're going to pay for it by not thinking strategically. But when I saw that by hitting tab accidentally, because I thought that would bring up my inventory, I thought, oh, cheats. Makes me think of Russ.
Yeah,
Russ is awesome. A cheater.
Yep. Like on Doom, you could bring up that terminal command and type in stuff. That was amazing.
That's right. I saw that you've been playing Sea of Stars still.
Yeah, it's funny. I came into the vacation thinking that I was going to play through Animal Well on the Odin 2 Mini, and the Switch version of it, basically. And this goes right back to the whole cloud saves thing, because I got maybe an hour into it and I was like, what's the point? None of this is getting saved anywhere. I'm not going to be able to jump back into my Steam Deck and play it. I want those cloud saves so I can go between platforms and all that stuff. Yes, my save game is saved on the Odin 2. I can transfer it to other Android devices and whatnot, and other emulated versions of the Switch version. But I don't want to do all that stuff. I want just the cloud save. So I abandoned it. I was like, you know what? Even though I had planned on actually playing through this whole game on my 11-hour flight from San Francisco to London, I was like, no, I gave up, and I just went back to Sea of Stars, because that is a game I have been playing through on just the Odin 2 all this time. So I'm 20 hours into it or whatever, which is the exact same problem with the Animal Well one. But for some reason with Animal Well, it really bothered me, and I was like, no, I'm not going to start. I'm going to play Sea of Stars. So yeah, I'm pretty close to the end game now with that game, and I'm enjoying it.
I feel like with Animal Well, maybe I'm wrong about this, but for me, I wanted to play that on my Steam Deck, especially the OLED Steam Deck, because there's so much of the screen that's just off, and so it's just black screen, and that makes it look so much better. Do you think that part of you was like, what does no, because that one has mini LED. Mini LED, which I don't know what the hell that means.
So it has really actually good blacks, really deep blacks.
Okay.
It just doesn't have the paint, watercolor kind of coloring that an OLED will. It's like an LED with deeper blacks, and it can get brighter. That's basically what it is.
Oh, okay.
So, or LCD, I should say. And so, it looked fine on there. It was a little bit small because it's only a 5-inch screen, so the same size as a PS Vita. That didn't bother me either. The controls were great. Everything was feeling great. It was the one cloud save thing where I was like, I've already gotten several hours in on the Steam Deck.
So
I don't mind going back.
Over.
Yeah, so I start all over again. I didn't mind that part. I was like, I don't mind doing the first 3 hours again. But it was that what if I don't finish now? That means I'm stuck forever on the Odin 2 to play this game, as opposed to on the Steam Deck, get an hour further, and then I can jump onto it on a desktop or whatever. Like, I've got those cloud saves to kind of keep me going no matter what I'm doing, like, as a content creator. And so, yeah. So that left me back with Sea of Stars, just because I'd already invested so much time into it that there was no going back with that one. And so I was like, I'll just play that one. So
Very cool. And you said you're 20 hours in, so you're almost done?
Yeah, I'm almost done. I think so. I mean, I'm getting, I don't know. Like, if you look at the Wikipedia page of the, like, plot, I'm like 2/3 of the way down as far as, like, the synopsis of what's going on. So I think I am pretty far into it. I will say that it is a game that if in the first 2 hours you're not enjoying it, I don't think you'll enjoy, like, the end game either, because it's almost the exact same thing. Like, I'm not seeing a lot of development in this game where it's like, oh, now it's getting good. Like, none of that's happening. It's just kind of consistent throughout. And so if it resonates in the beginning, then yes, it'll be great. If it doesn't, then you might struggle a little bit, because I'm not seeing, like, a huge growth in terms of just the gameplay style and whatnot.
Yeah, I think I played it a little bit on Game Pass, and I played enough to, like, finish your first lesson and then take the elevator up to the school or whatever, and then I was like, all right, that's cool, and I never picked it up again. And it didn't, not because it wasn't fun, just other things distracted me. But that's me. I always get distracted by things. Yeah. Speaking of things that have distracted me, after finishing Animal Well and just absolutely loving, it's a Metroidvania, absolutely loving that genre of game, which I absolutely do, I decided the guy who, like, started the company that made Tales of Kenzara Zao, he had tweeted that, hey, we're lowering prices because he wanted that game to reach more people, which is awesome. I bought it. I decided, you know what, I want to support a dev who really cares about the game that they're making, so I ended up picking that up before the prices went down. It's only $5 extra. I just wanted to support him. And then I figured, well, hell, I buy a lot of games that I never play. Like, I buy the game, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to play it. And then I get distracted by some shiny thing, and I never get back to it. So I figured, hey, I just spent money on this game. I spent an extra $5 because I wanted to support the devs. I better friggin' play this game. So I launched it, and I'm probably about, I'm going to say 2 hours in so far. And it's really cool. So you are this character who is dealing with the death of his father, which is the reason that the guy made this game, was kind of like his way of dealing with the grief of losing his real father in real life. But the main character has lost his father, and then I think he finds, like, a mask or something, and when he puts it on, it takes him on a journey to deal with that grief. And I'm not going to spoil anything. I don't think I can. I'm only 2 hours in. But you end up meeting, like, this guide, and the guide is, like, taking you through the world. And then the mask that you found has, like, 2 modes to it. There's, like, a sun mode and a moon mode. And the moon mode has more ranged attacks. So you can hit, I think it's L1, and you switch to ranged attacks, and then you can kind of use your right stick to aim your ranged attacks as you're fighting something. And then if you hit the L1 button, you can switch over to the sun mode, which is more melee attacks. And then as you're playing through the game, you get all of these other abilities that kind of get tacked on, and you can also choose the abilities that you have. So you can unlock an ability that'll make it so that you do more damage when you juggle an enemy. You can have something that'll make you heal when you hit somebody, that kind of stuff. And you get to pick, okay, I'm going to equip this ability now, or I'm going to equip this ability now. And like any good Metroidvania game, the traversal is very, very good. Like, you feel really good as you're trying to, like, use your double jumps and dashes and wall jumps in order to traverse across an area. And I feel like every time you come up to an area where you're likely to die, like, it gets an autosave point at that part. So you fall, you die, you're right back to there, and you can try again. So it doesn't feel like a super punishing game. I like it a lot, and it's it's definitely something that I'm going to put more time into. I've been playing it on my PC plugged into my TV. Not been playing it too much on my Steam Deck or any of the other handhelds I have. It's more of a couch game for me. But I'm really, really enjoying Tales of Kenzara Zao. Have you tried that one yet or no?
I have not. I remember this from the Game Awards. Like, I remember seeing this. This was like one where I was like, oh, yeah, this one looks great. I hadn't realized it was out. And so now I'm putting it on my wish list because, and it's only, right now it's on sale. It's usually $20. It's only $15 right now. And so, yeah, that's a good
I
price
think that might be the permanent price because it was $20. I think he lowered it to 15. I don't know if that's a sale price. I feel like he was saying this is the new permanent price. Which
great.
I don't know why it would say it's on sale then.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it looks great.
Yeah, very, very cool game. And then the other game that I was playing is, I've only played it for about an hour. I really wish that Rich was here because this is a Rich game. Absolutely a Rich game. It's called Dungeons and Degenerates Gamblers. And like when you look at this, you're going to think, oh, that's Balatro. Oh, yeah. It's not Balatro. You're playing blackjack against other gamblers, not real people, just NPCs. You're playing blackjack against them. But as I was playing, I was like, oh wait, there's weird cards that do extra weird stuff that is not normally in blackjack. And then like I had a 10, like you hit deal or whatever, or hit me. You hit the hit me button, and I had a 10 come out. And I looked over at theirs, the enemy that I was fighting against, and they had a 14. So there was the 14 of hearts. And I was like, what the hell is happening here? That's really strange. So basically the way it works is you pick a suit, and based on what suit you pick, it's going, like, that's what you start with. It's going to have different abilities. So I picked hearts because, doing a good job heals you by hearts. And basically what happens is if Russ and I are playing against each other, it's not a multiplayer game, but if Russ is the NPC that I'm playing against or whatever, and he gets 19 and I get 21, then I hit blackjack, right? And he did not. So the difference between us is 2. So then Russ would take 2 damage. That's the way that the game works. But then there's all these other weird cards that start showing up, very much like Balatro, and you can have special chips that do certain things. I definitely think that this is an interesting game that a lot of people are going to like, and currently there's a demo on Next Fest, so I highly suggest everybody check it out because it's not going to cost you a dime to check out, and it's going to be the kind of game that runs on anything, and it has controller support, which is a bonus.
Yeah, it's looking good. Like I'm always intrigued by this stuff. Like, oh, they're putting a new spin on things, but then I also am a little bit averse to getting it too complicated. Like it's cool when there's a little bit of stuff added, to make things a little bit more interesting. But it gets to the point where oh, now you got to build your deck and all these things and stuff. That starts to overwhelm me. Balatro's good because you just start from scratch every time, and so it's just a clean slate. And you get more things introduced the more you unlock or whatever. But it's always just starting out clean, and so I always like that feeling of Balatro. It's okay, it's just 20-minute spurts, and then I'll try the next one and see what I can change. Like Hades, I like that kind of thing. And so the roguelike element sounds fun. But the deck building part is I got to find that balance of whether or not it's going to be too much or not enough, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the deck building is something that I've started to run into where you will defeat somebody and then you'll get the ability to burn one of your cards and that card won't come up anymore. And immediately I ended up shutting the game off because I looked at the cards that I have available to me and I was like, well, which one do I want to get rid of? And I don't know enough about the game yet to make that decision, so it was one of those analysis paralysis moments. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna play some Zelda on my RG Cube because I don't know what to do. And so I just shut off the game and I grabbed the RG Cube. And I think that this is a good chance for us to switch over and talk about the RG Cube. But before we do, I just wanted to remind everybody, I've talked about it on the past couple of episodes. Russ, you just got back from London. You're about to get on a plane again to go to Philadelphia, because we're all going to get together and do a live show of the NerdNest podcast over at Too Many Games. So I just wanted to let people know about that, just because I know that not everybody gets to watch every episode. We're going to be in Philadelphia June 28th through the 30th. And you can come and see us and hang out with us, and then come to the show, and we'll record the show live. And if all of the recording stuff goes as planned, everybody who doesn't get to go will be able to watch that too. But if you're in the Philadelphia area, I would love to see you guys there. Are you excited about your trip, or are you a little sick of getting on planes?
No, I'm excited about it. I think it's worth taking a moment to just think about the fact that we've been around for a year and change at this point.
Yeah,
we went from hey, like a DM from you. I'm like, who is this Bill guy? I knew him from the Steam Deck Discord, right? And this guy's like, hey, you want to be a guest on my podcast? And I was like, let me look at your podcast first before I say yes. And I'm like, oh, and you're like, no commitments, you just want to come for maybe one episode or whatever. And I was like, I told him, I was like, I can't commit, right? But I'll do maybe every other week or something like that. And I've been here every week that I can ever since. And so I think it's amazing that we started, a year and some change ago, and now we're doing a live show at a games con or whatever they call these things. I've never been to one. And so, yeah, it's super cool that we're doing that. I think it's a great milestone for us.
It is. And yeah, we've been doing the podcast for a little bit over a year at this point. And so far, the podcast has been, just on YouTube, has been viewed 1.2 million times in the last year. And that's not counting all the people who listen to the show, which there are thousands of those too. So listen, there's no way that this would be happening without you guys that are watching this. So thank you. I can't wait to be able to go to Philadelphia and meet. I already met Carrie when we went to, where the hell was I? PAX. I already met Carrie when we went to PAX, but now I'm going to get to meet Russ and Rich as well. And I already met Bob. Bob Wolf is going to be on the panel as well. Just very excited about that. So, June 28th to the 30th, hope to see you guys at Too Many Games. If you see me wandering around the floor, come up, say hi. Don't say, oh, he doesn't want to talk to me. I would love to meet you guys. I'm very excited for it. All right, let's move on and talk about the Anbernic RG Cube. This is the latest handheld from Anbernic. Oh gosh, my fingerprints are all over the screen. That's gross. This thing is very cool, but there's definitely some drawbacks, and I've seen a lot of other reviewers talk about the same issue that I had, which was there's some hot spots or light bleed on the review units that were sent out to reviewers like you and me. And I don't know if Bob has looked at his yet, because he got two devices on the same day and was like, I don't know when I'm going to get to the RG Cube or not. But I think Taki Udon also had some issues with light bleed, as did the Fox or Carrie. So did you have any issues with light bleed on yours?
Yeah, so they sent me two review units, and I made a quick impressions video of it. So I really only had about 2 hours with the device. I saw a little bit of it, and I was like, I need to investigate this further. So I didn't really mention it in my video, just because I didn't want to raise a bunch of alarm bells before I had actually tested it myself. But as soon as
you were getting ready to get on a plane.
Yeah. It was literally 7 p.m. and the flight was at 4 a.m. the next day. And I also had my RG35X starter guide to work on and the Odin 2 impressions video. So I was just so stacked. I'd never been so stacked before. So I ended up just saying, okay, I can only give myself 2 hours with this device, just some quick impressions, and then I got to still edit the video and whatnot. I ended up finishing all 3 videos at 4 a.m., 15 minutes before I left for the airplane, for the airport. It was crazy. Anyway. So I had it, and I tested it out. I had 2 units, and I only unboxed one of them. And I was like, okay, this has got some issues or whatever. I've seen that kind of light bleeding around the edges before. It usually means that they've over-tightened the panel when they've applied it, basically. They've either pushed it too hard against the adhesive, or they've just screwed in the screws too tightly, or, things like that. And so But as soon as I got on the airplane with the RG Cube and I like turned it on in a dark environment, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bad, you know? And so as soon as I landed, I made a quick update and I was like, okay, the first bullet point is I'm seeing this kind of light blooming or bleeding. And then I just kind of went from there. So yeah, like it's weird. I had, you know, a good 2 weeks with the device, basically. You know, it's been about 2 weeks at this point. And that's like my major concern. I was like, everything is so great, but this light bleed is going to bother a lot of people. And I messaged Anbernic about it, and I was like, you know, this light bleed's really bad, you know. And they're like, oh, it's fixed. It's not going to be in anybody's unit but your guys's. We've already sent you a replacement unit. And so when I got home, sure enough, there was one waiting for me. So I have a third one now, and it doesn't have any of that stuff. Like, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because I had almost the exact same issue. The thing is that when we do our reviews, like we're under bright studio lights and stuff, it makes it harder to notice that kind of thing. I definitely noticed it a little bit but because I had a camera pointed at it, I had the brightness of the panel turned down, and you don't notice it as much when it's at a dimmer setting. So then, like, I did mention it in mine because I had luckily I had noticed it, and I was like, well, there's definitely light bleed here. And I reached out to Anbernic. They also said, hey, we're going to send you another unit. It hasn't arrived yet, but you know, I'm not Retro Game Core.
Whatever.
So when that comes, I'm sure that it will have been fixed. But apparently somebody said that only the review units got that because they had somebody's saying, hey, here's one with light bleed, put it in that box. Here's one without light bleed, put it in that box. And then apparently when they were sending them out to reviewers, they picked the wrong box. And it was like that was the issue. I don't know if that's true or not. I believe them when they say that the customers won't end up with that light bleed issue. And if you do get one and it has a light bleed issue, reach out to Anbernic and complain to them. I'm sure that they'll probably make it right. But you said the part that is very important. Aside from the light bleed, this device is really good, isn't it?
It is. I mean, like, it's an Android device, so that's kind of like people love that, people hate that. You know, the setup for an Android device, it takes longer, right? And so that is a pain in the butt. You got to do all that kind of stuff. You're going to have to configure it. Like, it's not like, for example, if you were to take something like a Linux-based operating system that's made for the RGB30, for example, which has the same screen on it, they adjust all of the things so that it like works perfectly with the square aspect ratio of the screen. You're going to have to do all that work yourself, you know. So it is not a plug-and-play experience compared to the Linux ones. But once you've got it dialed in, it's pretty crazy. Like, it's so good for 4x3 content and for taller stuff like Game Boy, and even if you play, you know, Super Nintendo or Nintendo in 8x7 aspect ratio, which is a little more squarish, they're all going to look amazing on there. It's not great. I'm not even trying it with like 16:9 content. So I'm not putting any PSP on there, even though it can play those games fine. I'm not going to stream on this thing, you know. But there's something magical about having, I don't have it on me, but it's so compact. And you get to play GameCube on it. And I just love that it's like a tiny little GameCube, you know. And it almost reminds me of the GameCube itself because it has like those big grips at the back of it, like the GameCube controller had those big grips as well. And so I am playing a little bit of PS2 on it, but not much. I'm mostly playing GameCube, and it's been a really good fit for me.
I played a little bit of GameCube, but the system that I think I like the most on it, and it has to do with that 8x7 aspect ratio, is Super Nintendo. Like currently, I'm in the middle of playing Zelda Link to the Past on here, and it, like, the black bars on the top and the bottom, they're tiny. They're tiny little black bars. And, you know, I have the RG35 XXSP here, which is, you know, the clamshell device. And I also loaded up a Link to the Past on there. And it's about to, I think it's about to start into that game as well.
Yeah.
You got bars on the sides, and you kind of have bars on the top and bottom as well. And it's just like, boy, everything's so much smaller. And I can get rid of some of those bars a little bit by doing, cover up my eyes. I think that I like this form factor better, but I like this screen more. And the thing that surprised me the most is, boy, oh boy, do I love Super Nintendo games with a joystick.
Especially that game. Yeah, totally.
Yes, it feels great using a joystick to play A Link to the Past.
Yeah, I am a big fan of playing those kind of isometric or whatever they call that kind of angle, especially Link to the Past with an analog stick, which is like totally not true or like not the way you're supposed to be playing it or whatever. But man, it just feels better. It feels more modern that way. I like it.
It does, and I am not a purist when it comes to this system didn't have or only had a D-pad, so you should only play the game with a T-pad. No, thank you. I would just play with whatever's more comfortable. Right. But when I looked at the RG Cube, I said, boy, I wish that they'd have put the D-pad up here. And the more that I play on this, the more I'm happy with the position that they did. And when I first got this out of the box in my review, I said, boy, I don't like how much movement I get on these sticks. The more I play, I'm like, it's really not all that bad. Would I have made different choices if I were designing this myself? Absolutely. Number one, I would not have gone with Android because I prefer to have those Linux operating systems for this kind of device. Although I went to Retro Game Core's website and went through and followed the Daijisho guide and got my Daijisho set up exactly the way that I wanted on here. I'm loving this device, and I don't know which one I like better. Which one do you like better? Do you like the Anbernic RG 35XX or the RG Cube?
I'm liking the Cube only one right now. Yeah, I like horizontal handhelds better. I like the clamshell form factor of the 35XX XSP. I have that one sitting here. But this is the thing. Like, I made the decision. I had this thing all figured out. Like, everything's set up, all the games loaded, everything like perfectly curated for it. And I left it at home the moment I got the RG Cube in my hands. I was like, this is the one. Like, it feels great. There's a big price difference between the two. It's like $100 price difference.
Yeah.
But I think it's, among those under $200 devices, it really hits differently because it's not one of those where you can do everything. You can do your game streaming on it, like a Retroid or, even like a cheaper Odin, like the older ones. Like, those are really neat little handhelds, and, they're 16:9. You can play a lot of more modern stuff. You can watch movies on it and stuff. The RG Cube is just so firmly like a gaming handheld, up to like PS2 and GameCube. It's such a good fit for me. I think that, I'm really enjoying it, and trying to temper my enthusiasm a little bit just because there's just so much choice out there. But this one is really winning me over. And I think 720p is the perfect aspect rate or perfect resolution as well, because it allows you to upscale. It looks good on that 4-inch screen. And it's not like, it doesn't require a ton of power. All those games can play fine. Most GameCube games can play at a 2x resolution. Like, it's great.
I will say, comparing the SP to the Cube, the sleep on the Cube, like it doesn't touch the battery. Sleep on this, you don't want to sleep. You want to turn it off because it chews through the. I think you said 4% per hour or something like that, which is a lot when you're not even using it. This one, it's basically an Android phone. So when you hit that sleep button, it just goes right to sleep, and then when you push it again, it just or it wakes up and then goes right back to sleep. Yeah, fantastic device. Would you want them to make one with a wider screen so that it would be more for PSP emulation in that case?
No. Like, they already made one. It's called the 556. It's actually the same chip, same Android. It's got an OLED display, 5.5 inches. That's great, too. That one's held back by the sticks a lot more because it makes you want to like stream like Destiny on it, and those sticks are not great for Destiny, and so they already kind of have one, and I think it's fine. I like the fact that they went down. I would have preferred maybe a 4:3 aspect ratio screen and 4 inches and 720p, but I just don't think they could find one. It's very hard to find these screens. You got to remember, these companies don't have the capital to like invest in manufacturing a screen. They have to find stuff off the shelf. And so somewhere Powkitty found these like 1:1 aspect ratio 720p screens, which they put in the RGB 30. And I think that Anbernic just like swept up and grabbed that source as well. And so that's why we're seeing this screen everywhere. And the only other option that Anbernic has done in a kind of larger screen has been 4:3, 4 inches, but only 480p. And you can just see the pixels on that. Like it's a very low PPI, it's very low resolution. And they used that with their previous generation, and I don't think that was perfect either. And so I prefer the 720p one over. I'd rather have more resolution to be able to deal with like integer scaling and having more options to choose from when it comes to resolution, as opposed to having something that's truly 4:3. I think this is a better fit.
So what's the GameCube game that you've been playing on it so much, other than Thousand Year Door?
That's it. I've mostly been playing that.
Just
and then
that one.
testing,
Okay.
just to make sure, hey, does F-Zero work? All those kind of things that I always like to do and whatnot. But that's it. And then on PS2, I was playing through Final Fantasy X. I got pretty far. Like I got like to the point where like I'm usually a little bit further than I usually am. So probably like 2 hours into it. That's a game I've never beat. Like I've gotten so far in that game so many times and never finished it. And so this probably will never happen. But it's always fun to just test it and have a little bit of fun with it. I could play Kingdom Hearts on it if I wanted.
Yeah, I wish that there was a good way to do cloud saves on these devices, because I've got this, and it's got the light bleed, and I'm like, so when the retail unit comes, that knock on wood, doesn't have light bleed, I'm going to want to play on that and not play on this. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to get too far in anything on this, because I don't want to have to go through any. I don't know what the steps would be to get my save states off of this. If it's just popping out my SD card and putting it in the new one, that would be amazing. But I don't know that. It's not. So, that's what I figured.
Yeah, RetroArch saves it internally. And so it actually makes a states and saves folder. So you can access those and then pull them off and put them on the new one. Or because you're going Android to Android, it's actually pretty easy. So there's an app called like Folder Sync is one, and I think it's like $2 or whatever. And so you can basically set it up where you can attach it to your Google Drive account and then say, hey, Google Drive, sync this folder, and then point it to your saves and states folder in RetroArch. And then on the other device, load up Folder Sync and say, okay, here's the location of that same folder. And then it'll sync between the two. Every time you close out of the game, it'll upload it to the cloud, and then every time you start it up on the other one, it's going to download it and do that. So it's possible. Android to Android is very easy. Anything else gets a lot more complicated. You throw in that Anbernic device, the RG35XX SP, and try to sync.
That's Linux.
Yeah, good luck. And same thing with like Windows PCs and stuff. It just takes a little bit, an extra step every time. But Android to Android is simple. So.
All right, good to know. I'll continue to play, and is that a subscription for that app, or is it just a buy one time?
Like a one time. Yeah, there might be a free tier without ads or something, but
I'll just pay for it. I always will pay to support developers if I can.
Yeah, so it is pretty simple. It's just a matter of doing that. Sometimes, you can always, another thing you can do, and I should probably put this in my RetroArch guides, but like you can just specify, say, hey, make my save states folder on my SD card. And you can tell RetroArch to do that. You can just give it a new folder, and then you can move that card back and forth as long as you tell the next RetroArch to also look in that same folder. So it is possible to do it without even the cloud. It just takes a little bit of work just to kind of go into the file system and move them around and set all that up. All
right. Well, I will look forward to that updated guide and the next guide of yours that I'm going to be looking at. I watched your video, but I haven't done anything because it has been a crazy week. But the next guide of yours that I'm going to be following is getting MinUI on here, I think, because I don't like the stock stuff that's in here. The stock is fine. It's fine. But watching your video with MinUI on there, I was like, oh, that's so much better.
Yeah, it's so clean. And that's what I ended up putting on this thing that I was going to take with me is I just got MinUI set up perfectly. There's even an add-on that lets you add back like the stuff that MinUI doesn't have support for, like Nintendo 64. And so there's ways to add that as well. And it's a bummer that Anbernic keeps making so many new devices all the time. Like I just had enough time to like get used to this guy, and then all of a sudden there's a new one. Like if they just spread it out an extra month or two, I think it would be a lot better. But they're on their own track. They make 10 devices a year, and it's hard to keep up.
It is hard to keep up. And the thing about these handheld retro systems, it's like you look at I'll just say 8 letters. Device A. You look at device A and you say, well, device A is pretty good, but this one thing I don't like about it. And then device B comes out, and that one thing that you talked about not liking is fixed on that, but then there's something else on device B that you're like, well, this isn't quite what I was hoping for. So it's like they keep doing that all through the alphabet multiple times. You're up to, the C14, like so many different devices, and they all are almost there, but none of them quite stick the landing, and that's why you look at the next one and you're like, all right, well, I guess this one, maybe this one will be the perfect one for me. Yeah. But I also feel like that's why everybody can have their own favorite, because everybody's, propensity for retro gaming is for different things. Like for me, my interest in retro games stops after the 16-bit era. I rarely play anything that's PS1, N64, or later. Yes, I tested those things, but I don't really play those because those aren't retro to me. Not that I'm saying that they shouldn't be retro, but when I think retro, I think 16-bit and earlier. So the way that happens and keeps, what's one thing that you would change about the 35XX
So, part of it was the clickiness of the buttons. I didn't like that. And then, other than that...
Which you fixed.
Yeah, other than that, it's just that it needs time for the software to, catch up. Like the custom developers to get all the, closing the lid and it'll turn off. All that kind of stuff. They still need to develop all that stuff. And already there's new consoles coming out. And so it just gets really hard in that kind of aspect. And so... I think this is almost a culmination of all the retro, the budget retro systems they've been making over the years. This one's kind of the culmination of it. And also their H one, which is the horizontal one. Both of those are I've witnessed this kind of progression where, they get 2 things right, 1 thing wrong, and they just keep doing that over and over again. The things that they're getting wrong are just fewer and fewer and fewer. And the RG Cube's a great example. It's got some light bleed, but it was only for review units, and so now that's fixed. And so now, okay, what's my problem now? Oh, they could use better sticks, these little things that are not deal breakers anymore, which is just kind of crazy, and
it used to be filled with deal breakers.
Right. There were so many deal breakers. You'd be like, okay, which deal breakers are you willing to live with? That used to be the top part of the conversation. Yeah. Nowadays, it's you got all these choices. Now you just got to pick one of these great options, It's just a crazy place to be in. And the whole review unit thing and getting light bleeding is so funny to me because if you just go on Reddit and you look at all this stuff talking about reviewers and stuff, it's they always get those cherry picked units. That's why they never have any problems and stuff. We got the opposite this time. We got all the non cherry picked stuff. And so we were all the test bed for this in particular, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, but light bleed aside, it's still a really good device. All right, let's move on. And I want to talk about a game that just got announced. We don't even know the title yet. But I am really, really hyped. We rewind to 2017, I think, and Yacht Club Games released Shovel Knight. I don't know if that's when it came out. That's when I played it. I played it on the Nintendo Switch. My son and I went through, and we played through the whole game, multiplayer. It was a fantastic experience. I love Shovel Knight. Somewhere here in the NerdNest, you might be able to see it behind me. I don't know. I have the Shovel Knight amiibo that my friend Charles McFall had sent to me because he knows how much I love Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is amazing. Yacht Club Games is fantastic, and they just announced that they've got a new Shovel Knight, a new mainline Shovel Knight that is supposed to be the next in the series, and they say it as a whole new dimension, which makes me think that they might be going 3D, kind of Yacht Club has said that Shovel Knight is their Mario. It's their mascot, and they want it to be like their mascot. And I almost think that what we're going to see is an N64 version of Shovel Knight, probably with widescreen support or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when they made the original Shovel, they made it so it would feel like this is a game that you could have had on the Nintendo Entertainment System back in the day. So I anticipate that we're going to see N64 Shovel Knight. Are you excited about the idea? I know you said in the pre-show that you love Shovel Knight. Mm-hmm. Are you excited about that in 3D?
I'm a little less excited about it, but I do have a lot of trust for Yacht Club games, and so yeah, I'm excited. Like I feel like Shovel Knight is basically a modern Mega Man in some ways. You know, just kind of the feel, mm-hmm. how precise your landing is. You know, when you're playing that game. So I really do like that aspect of it. They have that DX one. I don't know if you saw that too. There's a DX one they announced too, which is a new version of Shovel Knight. It's called Shovel of Hope DX, and it's going to have like rewind and all these other like enhanced features to it. And so I'm going to buy this game all over again, even though I've bought it so many different times. And so. Yeah, the 3D version or like an updated version, I'm always a little hesitant, but I think...
Well, we don't know if it's 3D, by the way.
Right.
Like, that's just me talking out of my butt.
Yeah, I will say I never played like Dig or whatever that other one was, Pocket Dungeon or whatever. I never played any of those spin-offs because those aren't really my genre. If they hit a genre that I like, you know, of games that I played before, and it seems like we kind of have our interests aligned anyway, yeah, I'm optimistic.
Very cool. I will say I played the hell out of Shovel Knight Dig. It's a roguelike. Mm. So, you know, you talked about Balatro is, you know, it's this 20-minute experience every time. Yeah. That's exactly what Shovel Knight Dig is. It's a roguelike. So every time you go into, I don't know, I guess the hole or whatever, like you jump down into the hole, it's a new experience. And it's all randomized and stuff. Very, very fun game. Played it on my Steam Deck. Runs great on there. Shovel Knight Dig, big 2 thumbs up for me because that game's really, really fun. I never played the Pocket Dungeon one. That's the one that I never played. But I played Shovel Knight. I played the King Knight DLC, the Spectre Knight, and the Plague Knight, like all the DLCs that came with it. Yeah. I played all of those. I played Shovel Knight Dig. I'm a huge Shovel Knight fan, so I'm hyped for this. And boy, I hope that we all, you know, speaking of Yacht Club games, I hope that we get to see Mina the Howler soon. That's another game that they've been working on for a really long time. Friend of the show, Bob Wolf, you know, he's talked about it multiple times that he's played it and it's fantastic. They're very tight-lipped over at Yacht Club. They don't tend to talk about stuff until it's ready. So I'm excited for what they have coming down the pipe. They've got to be one of my favorite indie devs.
Yeah, it's in this weird spot for me, and many games are like this for me, where I play a little bit of Shovel Knight. I haven't gotten very far in it. I get a little far in it, and then I'm like, oh, I want to save this for a rainy day. And then I never get back to it, you know, because I'm like, it's so good, now's not the time to play it. Like, I have that happen all the time. Mario Wonder is the same way, where it's just like, oh, this is so good, I don't want to, like, spoil it anymore. And so I'll stop playing it. It's like it's the dumbest thing, where something is so good that I don't want to play it. And
that is a dumb thing, Russ. I think that's your game of the year last year, right? Was Super Mario Wonder, and you're still picking away at it little by little, which I
played like 3 little levels on a flight, you know, like from London over. I played like 3 levels of it, and I was like, that's enough. Like I need to save this for later. I don't know why.
I'm not going to yuck on your yum, man. You do whatever it is that makes you happy when you play games. All right, moving on to this story from Game Informer. Apparently, Sea of Thieves, which was an Xbox and PC exclusive for a very long time. You know, it came to PlayStation. It is now the most downloaded PS5 game in May.
Wow.
I think that we can expect way more Microsoft Xbox games on PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
Exclusives are dead.
I have no idea if this game even costs money because it's free on Game Pass, so I have never even thought about it. Are they paying for it on PS5? Or is it a free to play?
I would assume that they're paying for it.
That's crazy.
Like well, what's crazy about it? That they're paying for it?
No, that it's the most downloaded game and it wasn't free. You know what I mean? Like people were paying for it and downloading it.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the list. I'm not seeing any free-to-play games on this list.
I'm looking it
So
up on
I
the
don't think
website
that
just to
they're...
double-check.
Yeah, because it says that it's the most... Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even think of that. It's the most downloaded game.
Yeah, it's $30.
But yeah, and it is a... Like, but they're not... I wonder if they're not counting like Fortnite and all of the other free-to-play games out there. Because when I look at this, it's Sea of Thieves, Madden 24, Call of Duty, Helldivers 2, NBA. You know, it's the big games that are paid for games. None of these are free-to-play games. So I wonder if all of those are not even in consideration here. That's an interesting take, Russ.
Yeah, but still, it's $30. I just looked up. It's $40 on sale for $30 right now. And so people are buying and downloading, which is crazy. And it's, part of me, my first thought was like, okay, if it's free to play, it's also significant if they were downloading and most downloaded because it's a big file. You know what I mean? Like that's one of those things where if it's a small file, sure, I'll download it and try it out, right? But this is a big file too. So people are paying for it and downloading the whole thing, which is a big game. And so, yeah, that's kind of interesting that it's above Madden and Call of Duty.
It is. So, well, okay. So here, have you ever played Sea of Thieves?
A little bit, yeah, maybe a couple hours.
Yeah, same. I played a little bit, and I was like, I can see how this would be incredible if you have like a group. I don't know how many people can play in a group or whatever. You've had like a set group, and you'd be like, every Tuesday we're going to sit down and go out on our pirate ship and do stuff. All of that. Like I can see how that would be very appealing. As an old man, I usually can't schedule that kind of thing on the regular. So, like I played a little bit with my son. He lost interest very quickly, so I lost interest very quickly. So I stopped playing it. It's funny though, because like I can see him on Discord, and I saw like. I was up here watching YouTube or something, and I happened to open up Discord to talk to somebody. And I saw he's pinned to the top, so I can always send him a message real quick. And I saw he was playing Sea of Thieves, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why he is suddenly playing this game again. I wonder if a bunch of his friends have PlayStations, and they're like, oh, well, we can now play this. And he was like, well, I have a Game Pass, so I'm gonna play it too. Right. I don't know. That's very interesting. So I like Sea of Thieves. I don't like running into the other players that are not my friends. Because, it's a very trolly game where other people can... I wouldn't say trolly, but there's other pirates on the sea, and, they're going to try and sink your ship and take your stuff. Right. I would prefer to play a version of Sea of Thieves where just me and my friends are, going up against NPCs and that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
But number one on PlayStation, I think that we're going to get all of all the big games from Xbox. They're all coming to PlayStation, and
it's a win-win for everyone, I think.
It is, except for the people who are console warriors. Like, those are the people who are going to be upset about this. But, I mean, those people are never happy anyway. Speaking of not being happy, the folks over at ASUS, they had a face-to-face meeting with, I forgot his name, Steve?
Yeah, so I watched the first 10 minutes of it. It's an hour and a half, so I've got a lot of watching to go. But it's a lot, even in the first 10 minutes.
It is, and it's very uncomfortable because he's like sitting there face to face with these people, and he's like, "So this is what it says on your website. Why are you lying?" And I'm like, "Holy cow!" Like, it was very uncomfortable. I ended up watching the whole thing. He does have a very succinct summary at the end, and he also has a website where he posts all of the things that they have committed to. But essentially, it really does feel, maybe I'm being naive, I don't know, it really does feel like the folks at ASUS are taking what he's saying seriously and trying to make it right. And that is awesome, because the ROG Ally X is, I don't think I've been this excited for a device since the Steam Deck. I am very, very excited for the ROG Ally X. I think that giant battery is going to make it really compete with the Steam Deck in a way that the other handheld PCs have been unable to do, because the battery life of the Steam Deck is just so much better than all of the other ones. So I'm excited for the ROG Ally X, but what I'm not excited for is like all of the stuff that we saw in that Gamers Nexus video and the things that people have been posting. It's funny, I was before you hopped on the show, I was listening to Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, which is he's a celebrity. He was Lex Luthor on Smallville, and he interviews other celebrities about mental health and stuff like that. And it's a very, very good interview. Like, it's a great podcast to listen to. And he was talking to somebody about like how he did multiple movies with Kevin Spacey, and he was, and people are always like, well, what happened? And he was like, well, he was a nice guy and nothing happened. He said, I can't really talk about, I can't talk about it because I don't understand. I didn't have that same experience that these other people had with him. Not saying that they're lying or anything like that, but other people had this awful experience with Kevin Spacey. I didn't have that experience, so I feel like I can't really talk about it. You should go listen to those other people talk about their terrible experience with this actor. And I felt like, not comparing Kevin Spacey to ROG, like to ASUS, but I feel like it's the same kind of thing where I haven't had any what's the RMA experiences with these companies, so I can't really talk about that experience. I can only talk about the hardware, but every time I want to talk about the hardware, everybody's like, yeah, but they suck and I hate them. And I'm like, okay, well, I understand why people feel so strongly about it, but I can't talk about that because I haven't experienced that. And that's the way I look at this situation. So I hope that ASUS pulls their heads out of their collective asses and figures it out so that people can say, you know what? ASUS has fixed their issue. And that's the thing that I hope to see at some point. Do you think it's possible that they're going to do that, or is it just too big of a company to have that kind of introspection?
I think that, there's a couple takeaways even from my first 10 minutes of watching this video and just kind of getting a feel for this. And obviously I'm going to dive more into it. But, the first thing I think that Steve did really well is that when he was talking to these people, which are some of the people who I had met previously also, like the Sasha guy he was talking about and stuff in the beginning. Like, I met that guy in New York, but he is so quick to be like, you're not the guy I need to talk to. Like, get out of my way.
Yes.
Who's up next, And so the fact that he did that all the way up the ladder, I think, was really admirable of him. Maybe it's just like my background in the military, but I like to give deference to positional authority to people. And so I am not the kind of guy who's like, you are scum, like, get out of my way. I need the next guy. I don't typically like, I don't know. I immediately, when I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, okay, what can you do? And then let's figure that out. Okay, you're not the guy. Let's keep going. He was very quick to jump to the next rung, which takes a lot of audacity to do. And I'm glad he did it because he got exactly where he needed to be. I might be too nice of a guy. I don't know. So that was my first kind of takeaway with that.
I will say that I don't feel like he was saying anything bad about the person that he was talking to.
Yeah.
He was saying, no, you can't say anything that I can actually take to the bank because you don't have any real power here. I need to talk to somebody with power.
Right, and that's what I mean. I don't mean he actually was saying that, like, Sasha's a bad guy. I think Sasha's actually a really nice guy and is doing what he can within his own realm, But yeah, it does take a while to move up that ladder. And for me, I would have gone about it a lot more slowly. I would have exhausted each resource on the way up. He was more like cutting to the chase, going right to it. And so I respected that when I saw it happen, especially because it's something that's outside of like my comfort zone to do something like that. So I'm really proud just to see somebody do that on behalf of everybody. I think it was awesome. Now, as far as like lasting change, time obviously will tell for that. I think that I've looked at their own like They have like a policy blog that they've been like updating, like customer service stuff. So they had their first reaction and they were like, oh yeah, we're going to make these steps. And it was all very vague. And then this next one was like, okay, here is our executive email. If you've ever had an issue and you weren't happy with it, fill it out and, send us an email with these specific things, like what was the RMA, like what didn't you like about it, and that kind of thing. So that's already great, right? But what are they going to do about it? And so it's going to take some time, but the Ally X isn't going to come out for a while. It's next month or the month after or something like that. And so we've got quite a bit of time for them to at least put their money where their mouth is a little bit before we can make these reviews. I don't think anybody's going to be able to make an Ally X review without talking about ASUS, And I had already kind of formulated in my head, I was like, okay, product-wise, this thing is amazing. Hardware-wise, I'm really excited about this thing.
Yeah.
But I have to caveat everything with the fact that it's coming from ASUS, and that all the issues that they've had and stuff. So it would be pretty neat if we're at a point where we can say that, yes, this is great hardware, and if something goes wrong, it looks like you're going to be taken care of. And so that's a great place for any company, any product to be, and I think that we're closer now. We'll see. It's a big ship, you can't just turn on a dime. And so we'll see how that goes.
Right. And he was able to get a bunch of commitments from ASUS. Right. And then he said, hey, I'm going to be following up with this stuff. And I think he also said that I think he said something along the lines of, I have other units that I could send in for RMA anonymously to check up on you.
Yeah.
And I was like, hell yes. That's the kind of thing that you want to do. Not everybody can do that. He's a big channel. He's got a lot of resources. He's got a team behind him. Like, that's the kind of things that you can do when you have those kind of resources. Not like people like Russ and I can't even compare myself to Russ, because Russ is like a big channel. I'm a smaller channel, but we're both guys in our attic, essentially. His attic just happens to be a bigger. We don't have the kind of resources to do that kind of thing, and he does, and he's using it for good. I was never somebody who watched Gamers Nexus stuff before, but I'm turning into a fan based on what he's doing to try and hold these companies accountable, because nobody else is doing that. And I think that it's really, really fantastic. The other thing that I will say, by the time the Ally X does come out, you're right. Everybody is going to have to, they're still going to have to caveat everything that they say, because I don't know if enough time is going to pass for us to actually see results. So, you're going to hear me, for my review of the Ally X, I'm sure that I'm going to say, by the way, I know that there's a lot of warranty issues that happen at ASUS. If you want to know more about that, go watch Gamers Nexus. That's not what this video is about, but I just want to make sure that people are aware of it, and then I'll talk about my review. I don't want to spend a bunch of time talking about it in a review, because I want to review the device, not the RMA experience, which I have never experienced. It doesn't seem fair for me to review that when I haven't experienced it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really hard thing to kind of find that balance for. When I made my initial Ally videos last year, I did a big, it was 50 minutes long comparison between the Steam Deck and the Ally. And I had a whole segment about just them as a company, even back then. And it wasn't because we were seeing issues with the Ally. It was because of all the motherboard issues that were coming out at the time.
Right.
A lot of it was from Gamers Nexus and stuff. But it was something I had to address, where I was like, listen, if they can fumble the motherboard stuff, they can fumble this device too. They've actually, can develop a pattern at this point. And so it was something I brought up. Got a lot of comments, people saying, you shouldn't have brought it up because it doesn't apply. And other people saying, I'm glad you brought it up. I don't trust ASUS, and so it's just your typical internet stuff where both sides are going to have their opinions and whatnot. But yeah, it's, I think, along the same lines as you, is where I'm just going to have to bring it up. Listen, you've got your choices when it comes to companies in addition to everything else. And this is another factor to consider. So.
It is. One thing I will say about the ROG Ally, not the X, is, that issue with the SD card slot. Apparently, in the Gamers Nexus video, they say we have a statement coming soon about that. So, we should, maybe by the time people watch this, I have no idea when that statement's coming out, but sometime in the near future, it looks like ASUS is going to finally address that, because up until now it felt like they were just ignoring it and hoping that it would go away, and it clearly isn't, thanks to Gamers Nexus.
Right.
So hopefully everybody who has an issue with the SD card slot in their ROG Ally can get that fixed. I know that for me, I never put an SD card in my ROG Ally because I was afraid it was going to get cooked. And like I said, I don't have the budget to go out and buy another big SD card to replace this one if it does nuke it. So I didn't buy. I just said, well, I'm not using that. Although with the ROG Ally X, I don't think I'll need an SD card because it's got a terabyte and it's M.2 2280. So those drives are really cheap. You had an issue with the SD card, right?
I did. My first review unit had issues, and then my second one that they sent, I can't remember because I had the Z1 and the Z1 Extreme. One of them also was having problems like registering the SD card, not all the time, but sometimes. And so that one I never turned back in. Actually, now I think about it, it was my replacement one. It's the one I still have. And so I don't use it, but I upgraded the internal storage to like 2 terabytes, so it doesn't really matter to me. One interesting thing that I just thought about when we're talking about this like balance between like acknowledging the hardware and then also the company and them being very coy about even acknowledging the SD card issue. It makes me think about Nintendo and like the Switch stick drift stuff. And it's almost like anytime you mentioned, like if we were having to do this kind of apply these same mechanics, it's like anytime you review a Switch game or a Switch hardware or whatever, you'd have to bring up the stick drift every time. Like, oh, and by the way, Nintendo also has this stick drift issue. There are other companies who have these problems. ASUS is really in the spotlight right now, but I get all sorts of comments from other ones, Ioneel, Lenovo, everyone else, where people are saying I had a hard time with the return process. Ioneel and GPD in particular are really rough because they require you to pay to send the device back, and then they'll take care of everything and send it back for free. But that's going to be $100 to send it back, and so. Yeah, there's no company that's doing it right, but ASUS definitely is getting the spotlight right now, and hopefully, this will be a turn for the better. So,
yeah, and the reason that Gamers Nexus or Steve, I'm going to call him Steve because we're good friends. I've never met the guy. I'm just kidding. The reason that Steve says that he's doing this is because ASUS is the market. Like this is what he said in the video. ASUS is the market leader for a lot of stuff, and if you can get the market leader to behave, then the other companies will also behave. Right. If he tried to do this with, I'm going to say Ioneo, just because I'm picking them, they're not the market leader, probably in anything. If they were doing the right thing, it doesn't push any other company to do the right thing. But when you can get the big boys or big girls, I'm not going to assume their gender, if you can get them to behave the right way and do the right thing for the customer, everybody else kind of, as the rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing, it makes things work better for the customer. And so I think that that's awesome. And I think one of the companies or one of the comments that I saw on his video was, we need to clone Steve and make his hobby medical insurance instead of having his hobby be video games, so that he can make videos about these scummy companies that are bilking regular people out of all this money over and over and over again. And that's the kind of thing that that's the why I respect Steve and what they're doing over at Gamers Nexus.
Yeah, he needs to. We need a used car version of Steve as well, so we can go after those guys. Like all that stuff. Like there's so many cracks in just our society when it comes to this stuff, and I'm appreciative of Steve and Gamers Nexus and them doing it within this little niche that we have. So it's awesome.
It is very awesome. All right. Did you? I don't know if you received yours yet. Did you get this yet?
I did. Yeah. I haven't done anything yet, but I have it. Yeah.
So these are some keyboard caps. Keycaps for a giveaway. We have a winner of the giveaway. I've already let them know and gotten their shipping information and everything. but it's here. Let me get the angle right so the light's actually hitting them. But you can see that it's all based on like. Mine has cat hair on it because I have a cat, but you can see like it says import and execute and whatever this says, npm run dev. I don't know what that means. That's coding stuff. There's some coffee keys on here, and I have not. I put a couple of the keys on my keyboard, and I was like, I don't like the color for the keyboard in my office, but these are very cool, and I like them a lot. And I just wanted to say congratulations to JDell22. You won the giveaway, and I've already sent your information over to Glorious Games so that they're going to send you your set of GPBT, terrible naming, by the way, Glorious, Code Brew, limited edition, 139 keycaps. Very cool stuff, and I just wanted to let everybody know that we had a winner. And are you like what? I know that you use a strange keyboard that has like round keys, don't you?
I use low profile keyboards. I have the Newfie, like the Air 75, this one, and so the keys are lower profile, and so those keycaps won't work on this.
No. These are low profile.
Oh, are they? Oh, I haven't even looked.
I took them all. I like when I was putting them. So here, let me grab my keyboard, which is a big chonker. So this is the keyboard that I use, which does not have low profile keys, and all of these keys were shorter than the keycaps that are on this, and so I thought that they wouldn't fit, but I popped off a couple of the keys and put them on here, and no, they fit, but they're a little bit lower, so I assume that means that they're low profile. And I was just going to put I was going to just put a couple of them on here, but when I put them on here, like I was going to replace WASD, you know?
Yeah.
But then they were in slightly the wrong position. If I had replaced all of the keys, it would have been fine. But mixing and matching with what I have on here was weird, so I ended up not doing it. But they're really cool keycaps, and they do like these sets that have different themes. So like they did one, I think it was last month, where it was like art, like hand drawn keys. So everything was like hand drawn, and it's like they're limited edition. So these ones are limited edition. You'll only be able to get them like this month, and then they go away, and then they bring out the next one. And this one's coding and coffee. So I just wanted to say thank you to Glorious for sending a set, but to everybody on the podcast, and to JDell22. And thank you to JDell22 for watching. He sent in a really nice comment after I told him that he won. You're awesome, JDell. But that's going to do it for the podcast today. And Russ, it was wonderful having you back, and I can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks when we head to Too Many Games and meet up there. You have been away for a week, which means you haven't been able to work on any videos. What are people going to be seeing over at Retro Game Core?
So I am going to do follow-up like reviews to the RG Cube. I almost call it the Arc again, and then the Odin 2 Mini. I'm gonna do the Odin 2 Mini first because I was looking at my channel, and like my last 3 videos in a row are all Anbernic stuff, and I'm like, they're getting too much screen time. So I'm gonna do the Odin first, and then the RG Cube, and then I'm probably gonna wait and do my London recap video after those two, just because I want to space it out a little bit. Because I just did like a New York trip video, you know, and it's a lot of footage. Like, so I was gone for like 11 days, and you know the way I do it is I'm walking around and I'm like, oh, I see something, and I'll record like a 10-second snippet of that, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll put that in the video, you know. And so I do like all these 10-second snippets all over the place. I'll fall throughout my vacation, and I got home and I imported all of them from my phone because I just used my phone this time, and there's 640 of these footage clips, and I'm like, how am I going to make a video? Like, it's so much, and so it's a little bit overwhelming. So I need to get back into the groove, make some review videos, and then I'll make that one, and then we'll just kind of keep going from there.
So when you went to New York, did you bring like your real camera, or was that all like your phone?
I brought my real camera that time, my new Sony a6700. That's my new top-down camera. It's kind of compact, you know. So I brought that with me, but I found myself spending too much time fiddling with the settings and stuff because I'm a manual kind of guy. So I'm just like adjusting all the time for the different lighting settings and stuff, and I'm like losing the moment sometimes because I'm just not fast enough with this new camera. And so this trip in particular, I was like, I'm just going to bring my phone. One less thing to carry around. It's just. you can get some good footage with the iPhone anyway. And so I just set it to 4K and 30 frames per second, and then just recorded a bunch of clips. And so we'll see how it all comes together. I've looked at a few of them, and some of the footage looks pretty awesome. So.
Very cool. For anybody who's watching this, if you are interested in hearing a little bit more about like what it's like for us to do content creation stuff, before we hit the record button, actually we had hit the record button, but before we actually started this particular episode, Russ and I talked for probably 15, 20 minutes about content creation and stuff like that. And that's going to be available for patrons over at the Patreon. There's a link in the description down below. It's a small Patreon. Not a whole lot goes on over there. You can get the show ad-free, and every once in a while I throw some extra stuff on there. But everybody who's there and checks it out, I do appreciate you. My next video, I don't know what my next video is going to be. I just put out my review of the RG Cube, and then I can't even remember what my last video was. It was something... It was something else. I can't remember now. It has been a crazy week. This time of year is always very, very busy for me because it's the end of the school year, and I'm wrapping stuff up before summer vacation, where then I work even more on this stuff. But thank you guys for watching and hanging out with us. You could have been anywhere, but you decided to spend the last, hour or so sitting with Russ and I appreciate that. So see you next time, and until then, I hope you stay rad. Bye-bye.